the best is yet to come. The best is yet to come, come the day you're mine.
Just let me get started here. There is a man that I have totally fallen in love with. I've always loved him from afar, but you can tell that I am still in love with this man because he has been on my show for like 3 times, and I haven't even been on the air that long. But I think his life warrants it. He's been through so much. He has done so much. He's contributed so much. And I have my notes, and I haven't even turned to them yet because he speaks to my heart, because he literally was the first man to do a lot of things. But one of the things that I credit him for is he was the first black televangelist that brought Pentecost in all of our splendor and all of our glory, with all of our speaking in tongues and shouting and doing what we like to do in church. He brought that to the forefront. He was the first to be on TBN and have the most watched show on TBN. Say what you want, say what you will about what he's preaching right now, but you gotta give this man credit. He has done a lot for the Pentecostal movement. God used him to bring us to the forefront. So the person that I'm speaking of, if you haven't guessed it yet, is Bishop Carlton Pearson. He was licensed and ordained in Kojic and formed his own church called Higher Dimensions, which became one of the largest churches in Tulsa. And in 1997, he was ordained as a bishop. And in 2000, you campaigned for Bush even. Invited to the White House, the whole thing. And as I mentioned, you had one of the most watched television programs on TBN, and also a highly acclaimed gospel artist. He can sing you up under a table. He hosted one of the most highly anointed conferences of all conferences, Azusa. And I know you remember that. And to sing or to preach on that stage, on the Azusa stage, was a privilege and an honor. People begged to get on that stage because they knew if they could get on that Azusa stage, their ministry would be catapulted to the next level. It was what it was, and Bishop Carlton Pearson single-handedly introduced the Pentecostal movement worldwide on television. You did. You're so humble with that. And to me, just as he was a forerunner back then, he's a forerunner right now. But a lot of people don't agree with what he's being the pioneer for. And I introduce to you the gospel of inclusion, if you have never heard of it, also known as the universal reconciliation. And what the gospel of inclusion is, or what it states, is that all people are saved, regardless of whether they come up to the front or come up to the altar and give their lives to Christ. Because of what Christ did on the cross, when he gave his life as a sacrifice, all men are saved whether they believe or not.
Whether they know it or not.
Whether they know it or not. And this belief, this single belief, has turned his life upside down, single-handedly. He has been, as my grandfather used to say, ostracized and criticized for many years, and a lot of people turned their backs on him. A lot of bishops denounced him because they said that it's not biblical, and you've been called every name in the book. And you said that there's no hell, and that has caused some ripples in the church. You've been denounced by the best. Oral Roberts has, turned his back on you. Some people came out in Charisma magazine, totally slammed you right before an Azusa conference, which literally almost basically shut it down. You've lost your church. You've had problems in your home because of the topsy-turvy things that your life has been through. And we want to talk about that a little bit tonight. You've been called a heretic. You've been called a lunatic. You've been called just plain crazy. And you've been hurt a lot. I know the Joint College of Bishops denounced you, brought you in a meeting to denounce you. Had to be embarrassing in front of all of those bishops that were your peers, are still your peers, and to stand in front of them. And how did they look at you? I'm just going to start. That was the introduction. This is Bishop Carlton Pearson. Please give him a hand. How did that feel?
Not good, but I didn't, excuse me for my raspy throat. Most of the preachers in that tribunal were not aware that I was going to be officially denounced. They thought I was going to present my case for them to make an opinion at some point. But the bishop that was in charge felt it was his God-ordained duty to help protect the saints from a heretic by pronouncing me as that and to defend the faith. Bishop Van Gayton was sitting next to me, not so much to take sides, but just to help explain some of the things I was trying to say as a theologian. He was not permitted to speak. But many of those men, hundreds of them, either called or emailed, or at least dozens, I should say, not hundreds, me afterward to say that they did not know that was going to happen and was not necessarily supportive of it. They didn't necessarily agree with what I was saying, but they wouldn't castigate me to that level. And I understood that, and I appreciated it. But I love the saints. I love God's people. I love them very much. I miss them, and I'm sure some of them miss me. And there's a healing coming. I hear from dozens of them constantly. They come to me like Nicodemus by night. And some of them are going through hell themselves in their own personal, private lives and in their ministries. And I'll never, ever abandon them the way some of them abandoned me, because I don't believe that's Jesus at all. We don't have to go along to get along. That's what inclusion says. I was with, I've been with several named, I won't name the people, leaders who've been hurt by us. We can be so mean and so harsh. We don't know that we're that mean. And I don't know who I was saying this to before the service. At that state, and this is a corrective thing, since people didn't know my state of mind at that time, the way I was so abruptly pushed away from the church, who were they pushing me to when they shut me out? Should I become an alcoholic, a drug addict? Should I blow my brains out, beat my wife and children? Of course, nobody knew my state of mind, since they said I was a lunatic anyway. Maybe I really was, and I needed them to come and help me. I don't know where they learned how to do that, but not from me. My peers and my sons in ministry, some of the peers and sons are here tonight, they didn't teach that from me. When Jim Baker got in trouble, I went to his bedside, spiritually. I said that because people know we had him on our, and I talked to Billy Graham. The same night that Jim Baker preached at Azusa was the same day the Oklahoma bombing took place. I was with Billy Graham the next Sunday, spent the whole day with him. And we discussed what had happened. I said, guess who was on my stage Wednesday night in my conference? He said, who? I said, Jim Baker. He said, guess who met his plane when he first got out of prison? I said, who? He said, I did. Guess who gave him his first home-cooked meal? Ruth, who was sitting beside him. Guess who visited